The Bargain Bride. The sun beat down mercilessly over the plains of West Texas, turning the dust to shimmering gold. In this dry, rugged land, cattle were king, and no man was more powerful than Samuel Carrington, the wealthiest cattle baron west of the Mississippi. With a face as rough as the land he owned and eyes like cold steel, Samuel had built an empire from nothing but sweat, grit, and blood. He wasn't a man used to compromise. That's why, when news spread across the county that he'd agreed to marry a woman known far and wide as the ugliest girl in Dustwood, jaws dropped. Her name was Eliza Mayfield. She had a hunched back, a twisted leg from birth, and a face marred by a large birthmark and sharp, lopsided features. But worse than her physical flaws, townsfolk whispered, was her quietness. Eliza barely spoke. People said it was eerie, unnatural. Some claimed she had a brain defect, others that she was cursed. No one dared say it aloud when Samuel was near. But they all thought the same thing. Why her? Why would Samuel Carrington, the man who could have had any rancher's daughter, any wealthy widow, any beauty from Dallas or beyond, settle for that? The answer lay in a contract. Samuel's late father, Gregory Carrington, had struck a deal with Eliza's father years ago, when both were young ranchers just starting out. If one man died without an heir, the other child would inherit both ranches, but only through marriage. When old Thomas Mayfield passed, leaving only his disfigured daughter behind, Samuel had a choice: honor the deal and merge the Mayfield lands into his empire through marriage, or lose the property to the state. He chose the former, not because he wanted a wife, not because he liked her, but because land was power and nothing else mattered. They married in the Dustwood Chapel, without flowers, music, or guests. Samuel didn't even kiss her. Eliza wore a plain gray dress and kept her eyes on the floor. She didn't weep. She didn't smile. She simply nodded when the preacher asked if she accepted the marriage, and that was that. The people called it a cruel arrangement. But what no one knew was that Eliza Mayfield was far from ordinary. At first, life on the Carrington Ranch was exactly as Samuel expected, silent. Eliza made no demands. She cooked, cleaned, and stayed out of his way. She took her meals in the kitchen and slept in a small room beside the pantry. She never entered the master bedroom. Samuel didn't mind. He was used to solitude. But soon, strange things began to happen. The cows stopped falling ill. Their milk yields increased. The barn, once plagued by termites and rot, was suddenly sturdier, patched with new wood and expertly reinforced. Samuel hadn't hired a single carpenter. Then came the books. Samuel found them in the parlor one morning. Thick volumes on livestock genetics, irrigation engineering, soil chemistry. All had been checked out from the Dustwood Library under Eliza's name. He confronted her. "What are you doing with these books?" he asked, frowning. She looked up from the stew she was stirring. "Reading? Why? I want to help." He stared at her, caught off guard by the directness of her voice. It wasn't shy. It wasn't simple. It was clear and firm. "I didn't ask you to help," he said gruffly. "You didn't need to," she replied. "Your soil's too alkaline in the east fields. Your cattle are inbred. Your fences lean southward from wind pressure." Samuel blinked. "How the hell do you know that?" "I watched," she said. And she had. Eliza spent her nights reading and her days observing. Not just the land, but the workers, the cattle, the equipment. She noticed things others missed. Within weeks, she redesigned the irrigation layout to maximize water flow. She bred healthier calves from carefully selected stock. She even negotiated with a rival rancher for shared access to a creek, cutting Samuel's water costs by half. His profits soared. He didn't say thank you. That wasn't his way. But something in him shifted. At dinner one evening, he finally looked at her, really looked. Her face was still plain. The birthmark still stretched across her cheek like spilled ink. Her shoulders still hunched slightly. But her eyes, they burned with intelligence, with patience, with strength. "Why do you stay?" he asked. She paused. "Because this is my land, too, and because I gave my word." He nodded slowly. In the months that followed, word spread across Dustwood. The Carrington Ranch was thriving like never before. New breeds of cattle, stronger than any before. Fields blooming with alfalfa, where only dry scrub once grew. And people began to talk again. But this time, they didn't call her ugly. They called her something else, the brains behind the Baron. By the end of spring, Samuel Carrington was no longer sure who held more power, him or the quiet woman with the crooked leg and the sharp mind. And for the first time in his life, he didn't mind. He started dining in the kitchen with her. They spoke about soil acidity, market prices, and even poetry. He found himself laughing at her dry wit, surprised by how natural it felt. One night, as the wind howled over the plains, he found her on the porch, watching the stars. "You don't talk much," he said. "I speak when I have something to say." He nodded. "Well, I reckon I've got something to say." She turned to him, eyes curious. "I misjudged you," he said, "and I'm glad I married you." She smiled then. "Not wide, but real." "You will be," she replied. And that was the night everything changed. The transformation and the truth. By midsummer, the ranch was unrecognizable. Fields once cracked with drought now shimmered with green. Cattle auctions that used to barely break even now ended in bidding wars. Ranchers from as far as Oklahoma came to see how the Carrington land had become the most profitable in the region. They expected to meet Samuel Carrington. Instead, they found Eliza. She stood beside her husband, not behind him. Her clothes, though simple, were cleaner and better fitted now. Her hair was no longer a tangled braid, but fell neatly over her shoulders. And though the birthmark remained, people barely noticed it anymore. It was no longer the first thing they saw. They saw her command, her confidence, her genius. Samuel watched it all with quiet awe. He used to take pride in being the smartest man in every room. Now he realized he'd married someone even smarter. And instead of feeling threatened, he felt something else, a strange, stirring sense of respect. And perhaps, just beneath that, something gentler, admiration. One evening, as they shared coffee on the porch, Samuel asked the question that had haunted him for weeks. "Eliza," he said, "where did you learn all this? The engineering, the breeding techniques, the economics. You didn't go to school, did you?" She looked at the horizon, her voice soft. "Not officially." "Then how?" She sipped her coffee before answering. "My father didn't believe in wasting time on a daughter's education," she began. "Said I was too ugly to marry, too frail to work. So he kept me indoors. But I read every book he brought into the house, listened through the walls when he met with ranch hands, traders, bankers. I watched and learned." She paused. "And when he died, I was alone. Everyone thought I was useless. But I made a promise to myself. If I ever got a chance, I'd prove them all wrong." Samuel leaned back, looking at her in a new light. "You did more than prove them wrong," he said. "You built an empire." She turned to him. "We did." And in that moment, something clicked between them. Not passion, at least, not yet, but partnership. The kind that's forged in shared struggle and mutual respect. Still, a part of Samuel remained unsure. Not of her, but of himself. He had married her for land, not love. Could he ever earn her forgiveness for that? The answer came sooner than expected. Dustwood was hosting its annual cattle and homestead festival. And this year, the Carrington Ranch was the centerpiece. Samuel was supposed to give a speech. But at the last moment, he did something no one expected. He stepped aside. "My wife," he told the crowd, "is the reason this ranch is thriving. She's the reason we're here. And if you want to know how to build an empire from dust and grit, you don't need to talk to me. You need to talk to Eliza." There was stunned silence. Then applause. Thunderous, rising, unending applause. Eliza stood frozen for a moment, heart pounding. Then, slowly, she stepped forward. She spoke for 5 minutes. She talked about innovation, about hard work, about second chances. And when she was done, people didn't just see her, they believed in her. From that day on, the whispers changed again. They no longer called her ugly. They called her unstoppable. That night, back at the ranch, Samuel approached her on the porch once again. The wind was soft this time, the stars above like spilled silver. "I've been a fool," he said. She looked at him quietly. "I married you for land, but I got something more valuable. A partner, a mind sharper than mine, a heart stronger than any I've known." He took a breath. "And if you'll have me, I want to start over. not as a business deal, not as a contract, but as a real marriage. For a long moment, Eliza said nothing. Then she reached out and took his hand. "I was waiting for you to catch up," she said. And she smiled, the kind of smile that could turn dust into rain and barren land into home. Epilogue. Years passed. The Carrington Mayfield Ranch became a legend. Universities sent students to study Eliza's agricultural models. Ranchers across the South adopted her innovations. Samuel and Eliza had 3 children, each raised not just to run a ranch, but to honor hard work and vision. And whenever someone asked how it all began, Samuel would chuckle and say, "I married the ugliest woman in Dustwood, and she turned out to be the most beautiful soul I ever met." And no one ever disagreed.